Serial Experiments Lain is a cult classic anime series from 1998 that follows the story of a little girl by the name of Lain, and her descent into a deeper rabbit hole she discovers through the internet. That is a basic summary of the plot, but there is clearly far more to explain as the series conveys many deeper meanings, hidden messages, and a lot of different mind-bending twists that shifts the interpretation of the show heavily depending on the viewer. Despite this, the series does hold on to its own core messages surrounding your perception of your own reality, forging your own identity, and the distinction between the real world and the internet, or more so the lack thereof. These core messages that still hold up important to today's world, as well as the anime's creative use of white noise, silence, animation, and its soundtrack, as well as its unique way of telling its story visually, have given it the popular cult status that it has, and an incredibly large and somewhat secluded following. With this, its followers are often very unique and far more passionately moved compared to those you would normally find on YouTube, Twitter, and so many other places. Now obviously you have your fair share of local fans who just simply enjoy the series and just watch it to enjoy it, but that's not the portion of them I want to talk about today. Rather, instead I want to talk about the unique and incredibly creative influence that Lain has had on its following, while also connecting certain things I see to the show as well. So while this isn't an overall in-depth analysis or review on the show itself, as that's something that has been done millions of times already, if you do like Lain, I definitely would still recommend you watch this video. And if you aren't that big into the series, I would still recommend it as well in order to see all the creative and unique things that have started because of this very old show. I'm making this video as a bit of an outsider as well, as while I have watched the show and did enjoy it a lot, I've only recently discovered lots of the things that I've found. So go easy on me if you've heard all these before. I got access to 2 of these things through a friend. They know who they are. Okay, and while I said this wouldn't be an in-depth analysis of the series, I'm gonna have to cheat a little bit as I would like to go deep into the things that this show executes very well that has given it the impact it has right now. I really want to talk about just how much this older series has become so impactful today, as when you really look at it, it's kind of surprising to see. SEL only ran for a total of 13 episodes, so it's not like there's any long-running story that makes you attached to it as much as you would for something like, let's say, Yu Yu Hakusho, Cowboy Bebop, or even Death Note. And Lain isn't as big as either of those series, obviously, but you get the point I'm trying to make here. Such a short-lived series typically doesn't gain the type of long-running following that Lain does. So while it does seem rather odd, a viewing of the show and connecting it with both the real world and with its audience can actually answer the questions pretty well. And that's mostly due to relevance and commentary. Lain's tackling on subjects such as the growing relationship between the real world and technology is something that only makes the show stand the test of time more than a lot of others, and it only grows as time goes on, with many of us using the internet as forms of expressions of ourselves, escapes from reality we live in, or to consume whatever knowledge or mind-numbing activity we can find. It will only make you connect with and understand a series like SCL far more easily, which makes its relevance only grow more and more as time goes on, and the connections you can make to real life from that show makes it that much more of an interesting viewing experience. Visual work conveys the technological aspects very well too. Despite its age, there's many scenes from the show you can watch that just look so awe-inspiring and beautiful to look at. The early 2000s and 90s vintage look adding on top of that only makes it that much harder to not appreciate, because visuals like this are not something you really get to see anymore. A lot of the interest can also stem from the main character, Lain, a character who shines in a specific key aspect, which is relatability. While Lain doesn't exactly have lots of emotional dialogue or really even expressions, the emotion of the character or really even the development of them isn't what makes her relatable. It's the motivation. Being a character trying to escape a very boring, mundane life, consumed by curiosity of both the real and digital world, it paints out things that many people today can find in themselves. Her lack of success in many things such as socialization and just her family as a whole makes her easier to sympathize with as time goes on, and you can see all the reasoning in whatever she does whenever she does it, and it only makes her more relatable as a character to pretty much anyone out there who's still progressing to find themselves. Whether through neglect from her family or from people outside of her home, there's a part of yourself you can find in her in some aspects, which makes her work very well as a protagonist. You also can't deny that its soundtrack is masterfully done. It's one of my favorite favorites in all of anime. The opening is iconic as well, and the show uses music in a very unique way as it always blends white noise and silence with more slow-paced and less impactful scenes. While many who watch could find this uninteresting and boring, it can also stick with a lot of people's intrigue when watching the show and analyzing the details of everything, because really, almost everything in this show is there for a reason. All of these things play a massive part in the major impact SEL has on people today and why its popularity and connection with audiences only continues to grow as time goes on. And now that we've gone into all of that, there's a few Lain projects I'd like to talk about for the second half of this video, as when you have a series that tackles the internet the way it does, you're going to have loads of projects put onto said internet relating to this show. Okay, I'm kind of cheating again right here, as this isn't a fan project rather than an official project, but I think it's an interesting addition to SEL that's well worth talking about, especially its strange accessibility. Now, if you're a big Lain fan, you probably already know about the PlayStation game that was released so many years ago. It was released only about, I think, a couple weeks after the anime had concluded, and is also a big staple on the franchise despite being way less remembered. Something interesting about it is that it isn't really a game, but more so a simulation. Much like The Wired in the show, the creators intended for this to be the case, as they didn't really make this with the word game in mind, even though it was being put onto a gaming console. From what I believe, it has canon material in it to Lain and also allows you to explore the Lain story through the simulation. Your goal is to unlock information and explore them through short video clips, audio files, or viewing things like blueprints. You access different levels by going up and down with Lain as you navigate through the wormhole-like structure of information you're given. It's not necessarily a puzzle, but there are aspects of it, such as you needing to do certain things in order to access certain information in the simulation. With it being a 24-year-old game, you obviously can't just go buy it from your local GameStop and pop it into your PS5 all fresh and new, but there is a website you can actually play the game on. Now, I don't know all the legitimacy of it, but since it's how I got access to it, and it looks like the game that I saw on YouTube, I'll put the link up for you to go through if you feel interested enough to check it out, but I won't be putting it in the description. Alright, you got it? Okay, moving on. A more interesting addition from passionate fans is an ambient vaporwave album made by Echochamber titled I'm Real, I'm Here, that acts as a tribute album to serial Experiments Lain, as the cover art to begin with is a photoshopped edit of Lain, and the album has many samples taken from Lain's episodes and soundtrack, while also having samples from some other shows such as ReZero. Despite being a tribute album, this is still definitely a standalone album that really anyone can listen to as an outsider. It's not a very popular and well-known album, it's surprisingly really well made and sounds really good though. As someone who never really listens to vaporwave music, I can even say I found this album to be really enjoyable and at times super relaxing. The music in it just sounded so soothing. I'm even listening to it whilst editing and writing this video script, as it works really good as background noise or just something to sit back and listen to. It's about 17 tracks long and over an hour in length, but it's still very much worth the length because it's not really dragging. I mean, it's pretty hard for music like this to drag out. Artistically, it's very creative, and it's surprising to see that this isn't more popular than it actually is. Echochamber isn't an artist that I'm all too familiar with, but I do plan on getting more into their music off of this alone, and I believe that anyone into vaporwave, ambient music, SEL, or just music in general would probably find some enjoyment and purpose out of it. Sadly, I can't find it on any major streaming platform, however the full album is on YouTube, so I will leave a link to that in the description down below that you can all check out. This album itself also has its own impact on others, as there are other Lain inspired pieces of music that followed after it, and even some based on other shows. But Echochamber, from what I know, is the OG when it comes to it, so it's who I wanted to shed light onto, as it's a very good example of a fan-made passion project and tribute done beautifully well. Probably the most interesting and popular Lain project out there is the website Wired Sounds for Wired People. It's been covered to death on YouTube and was originally going to be all I talked about in this video before finding other examples that I wanted to talk about as well, because it's just that interesting of something to go through. The website has a very glitchy black and pink structure that starts out looking like a type of game. The website itself is a sort of puzzle you can go through and explore through compilations of different GIFs, animations, and images of Lain with ominous noise in the background while trying to find where to click in the image to send you to the next one. You can even go and download things from the website that the creator had worked on previously. There are a few unfinished sandbox-like games you can access on there, but I'm unsure of if these are still in progress or ever going to be finished. But I would assume that it's a fan game around the series as well based on the scenery of said sandboxes. The website has its own little character list in the help index as well, such as Peeping Tom, Observer, Lain herself, Default User, Pusher, and Light Orb. Then there's also an About Me section where you can learn about the creator of the website. What I think is the most popular about the website though is the login page, as seemingly only a select few have actually logged into this page, and the logins are almost never the same login. From my own research, there wasn't a clear answer on what was actually beyond it. Some say it was to some weird rat site, whatever that means, and others say there wasn't even anything beyond it at all, though they do depend on the times they were answered, as it seems to have changed over time. Over the years, it's been discussed what the site actually was and what it stood for. Some called it an ARG or a cult site, but there's a very clear answer as to what it actually is. It's a passion project. It's a website made by a very talented fan that loves SEL and wanted to spread the word of the series around in its own creative expression. And that's through a very well-designed fan site with so much to explore. You can go through the website for hours and it's almost all dedicated to Lain, though as of recently it's become a lot more of a blog that shows more of the creator's passion outside of Lain as well. There's even now a discussion board type of page on there now too for people to express appreciation for the site as well as their love for Lain. Now through an outsider's lens and probably to a lot of non-anime viewers, this looks very creepy, but really it's just a fandom expressing their love for a well-beloved series. And when you actually watch the show, the site doesn't really look all that ominous, as you then have context. I won't go too deep into the site as it's much more interesting to go through it yourself, but I'll leave a link in the description for it and show it on the screen as well for you all to go check it out if you so desire. It's definitely worth the visit and worth the time of exploration. And so to conclude this all, Serial Experiments Lain is a masterful series with a very dedicated and unique fan base and impact on the audience it's been able to generate. It's something I've not seen with really any other series before. It's just so much different from them. And all the passion projects for it that have been created out of love for the series have left me speechless with all the dedication and creativity the fans have to show for their love of the series online. The main reason I wanted to make this video is because of a simple reason. We as a community always talk about how annoying and awful anime fan bases can be and how toxic they are. And while that is mostly true, I wanted to make a video that shed light on the more positive side of fandoms. The people who genuinely show appreciation for what they love, and express said love in a very fun, creative way instead of telling you to jump out your window for not liking the recent chapter of said manga. I love this side of fandoms that can make beautiful things out of something they can enjoy and find inspiration through them to make something great that you can truly be proud of yourself for. Many series can have this type of impact, but I don't think I've seen anything with as unique of an influence as Serial Experiments Lain, given why I made this video and why I decided to talk about it this week. And that's mostly all I wanted to say in this video. To everyone watching this a few days late, happy Halloween, go to the movie theater, watch, I don't know, Smile, Halloween Ends, or Terrifier 2. I'm lying, go watch Terrifier 2, the other two are lame. If you're not gonna go to the movie, go out trick-or-treating, wear a good costume, and if you're not gonna do that either, then enjoy your safe night at home or your very crazy Halloween party. Happy Halloween, I love the spooky season, and I hope you all have a good day. Bye bye now.